Hi, love. How are you?
I'm good.
So, hi, everyone. Welcome to this Eden Room event. Happy New Moon in Aquarius. I'm delighted to be welcoming you today. My name is Kat Diva, and I'm joined by business astrologer, chartered accountant, and bit of a boss witch, Vicky Green. And she's going to be chatting about the energies of this new moon in Aquarius. We're going to take some time to set intentions together and having a little overview look at 2021, a bit of a feel for it, and understanding more about business astrology, how you can use it in your life and in your business for rapid transformation, for knowing of best times to scale or sell or launch or make particular offers, lots of things. There's lots of seasons in our lives and seasons in our businesses that astrology can really, really help us with. So we're going to hear more about Vicky's incredible story of inheriting a business that was significantly in debt, to the tune of, I think, was it 6 million, Vicky? 6 million in debt, that she turned around and was able to sell for a profit within a very short, relatively speaking, time frame, and using astrology to help her to do that. So there's lots of juice coming. I want to start by thanking you, Vicky, for sharing your gifts with us today, and happy new moon to you. How are you feeling with it all at the moment?
Thanks, Kat. I think I'm feeling pretty good. I have to say that this new moon seems to be building on some of the energies that have been coming through from last year. So still lots and lots of clearing house. So very much feeling like, wow, this is the beginning of something big. Just wait and see how big it gets.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I'm feeling that sort of a build up, a bit of, I thought it was the Mercury retrograde, like a bit of the feeling of like digging deep and getting clarity, but having to do the work to get it, getting worked a bit.
It's exactly that. So this new moon with the stellium in Aquarius, with Mercury retrograde actually joining everything up backwards, I think is just intensifying what we'd normally expect to feel.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I saw like a back stitch when you said that. That's very interesting. Okay, so before we dive in, which I can't wait to do, and I know we could just go straight into it, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, let people know a bit about your background, and if you share to us a bit about your story with business and astrology and why it's led you here today.
Yeah, sure. So I started learning astrology when I was a kid from my Irish gran, who absolutely loved astrology. We all had our own mugs with our signs on. I just thought it was magic. Well, it is magic, but that's another story. But it really went on the back burner. Although I tried digging out some library books when I was a teenager, I found doing some of the hand-drawn calculations quite tricky. It wasn't until, believe it or not, after I qualified as a chartered accountant, that I suddenly thought, oh my God, I obviously haven't done enough studying. I'm sort of a bit more confident on my numbers and really started studying astrology seriously. And that just unlocked a journey that I think I wasn't expecting. So although I'd had some familiarity with it, I think there's nothing quite like the moment that you first see your birth chart and you understand that you're a lot more than just your sun sign. And from then on, really, I've just been addicted, probably would be the polite term. In terms of using it with business, I mean, it was quite natural to me in some senses. Obviously, sort of seeing the patterns and tuning in, and then realizing how all the different companies that I was lucky enough to work with were actually shaping up themselves. But as Kat says, it was really, sadly, when my mum passed away, and overnight I inherited shares. I was a co-owner in a transport business. Trucks were not my speciality. That had got about £6 million worth of debt with a variety of major banks. And it was at that point that I realised I actually did need to tune into something bigger than myself. At that moment, I know we all know that we can deal with whatever's been given to us. But thank God I actually did have the astrology to be able to get some kind of a wrapper around what the meaning of it was for me, something that seemed to be a bit of a bolt from the blue, and actually how to navigate forward. And Kat's quite right. Eventually, we did sell the business to a Fortune 500 business. So we went from being quite a small family business to actually being part of a Wall Street announcement, which was very exciting. And since then, I've really enjoyed doing a variety of sort of consultancy work. And again, with the astrology quietly in the background, but always, I would not dream now of actually working on a business without having some sort of information from my astrology alongside.
It's so brilliant. It's so juicy. I love it. I mean, you know that I work with more individuals, but that I definitely poke around under the bonnet and use the astrology chart as well as a couple of other readings to help me to really know what's going on and what I'm working with. So the idea for doing that for businesses, I think, is fantastic, and the scale of breadth and future vision is beautiful, because I think more than ever people do want their profitable businesses and they want to be on purpose and they want to have their lifestyle, but they want to know that what they're leaving the planet with is worth having. It's like the age of Aquarius, which we're going to come on to now, is only going to sustain the life forms that are life-giving. That's my belief, that if we're not thinking 7 generations ahead, if we're only in the very short instant gratification, what's in it for me and how do I get my needs met right now in this moment, those are the things that are going to fall apart. It's that reptilian way of thinking, very short-sighted, very sort of in fear and dog eat dog and survival of the fittest. And we're moving more into this mammalian, Aquarian, or even more like tribal in a way, but as a community, as a global community. And if it doesn't benefit the whole, and if it's not going to be worth leaving on the planet, is it worth doing? You know, is it beautiful? Is it meaningful? Is it helping someone? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is it life-giving and life-affirming? Or is it taking? Is it destroying? Is it, you know, ugly? Is it like not really worth having? Because, and I mean that in the sense of like buildings and things, we had a lot of, you can see the cultural shifts in architecture where beauty stopped being important to us as a species, and all of the enlightened cultures around the world have treasured beauty, haven't they? And a lot of them have looked to the stars and valued what the stars have got to say about navigating a course while we're here on the earth for that limited time as well, so that things are a bit more, have a bit more longevity and life in them.
That's fascinating, because as part
very
of the
meaningful.
yeah, we've just had Venus conjunct Jupiter as part of this little bunch. So more than ever now, that's actually up there, sort of saying it's time, people.
It's time. It's our renaissance that's bubbling. I feel we talked quickly yesterday about how this stellium hasn't been there since 1962, and you know, obviously we all know what happened in 1962. The Beatles went off to India. They came back completely transformed, right? Seeking higher knowledge, expanding their consciousness. And then there was that on-ramp to 1969, the Summer of Love. Massive decade of transformation and social reform and people on a movement, but there was a lot of soloists at that time. And I think what's happening now is we're going to have a pretty strong choir coming forward with a new message and a new way and a new voice in the world that is speaking up around the change we would like to see and the change we want to be, and how we're not really interested in giving our energy and money and attention to anything other than this course for humanity that gives more life to all and less to none. So that's, I'm gonna not say anything else. I want to hear from you. Let's take it away, get us started with this new moon and maybe how it's contextualized for the year, and then perhaps I'll jump in again and we'll set some intentions together with everyone. So I hope you've all got your pens and paper. If you've got questions, put them in the chat. If you're watching on the replay and you have questions, feel free to drop us an email. And we'll, at the end, we'll let you know a bit more about Vicky and how to find her online if you want to check out her services personally. So Vicky, over to you.
Right, so new moon in Aquarius. I mean, obviously we do get one of these every year. So to a certain extent, this picks up on common Aquarian themes. It's the right time of the year for start to think about our spring cleaning. It's the right time of the year for really sort of assessing what has and hasn't worked in terms of what we saw last year. I think it depends what type of person you are. More people I find actually maybe don't set their New Year's intentions on the 1st of January. They wait until they've got Imbolc under their belt. And then so we're really getting into February before we can feel the energy of the new year that's coming through us. So all those wonderful sort of seasonal aspects definitely arrive. But what we are also looking at here is this stellium. So this absolutely supercharged moment in time, which is underlining every aspect of our lives. I mean, it started somewhat last year with that great conjunction you may have seen in the press about Saturn and Jupiter coming together. They joined up not only on the solstice, so 21st of December they came together, but they also joined up on 0 degrees Aquarius. I mean, that is so rare. We're looking at about, the last one of those in Aquarius was over 600 years ago. So here we are, we're not just back to 1962, you know, we're back to the 1400s. So this is so momentous. So this new moon is picking up on all of that energy coming through. So we're at the beginning of a new epoch. I mean, depending on our views, some people really associate that with the age of Aquarius. As Kat was just talking through, I mean, we tend to form an image of the divine. That was certainly Jung's view. So we're moving out of Pisces, where we were looking at a kind of a hierarchical spirituality, into this new era, where really it is up to the individual, and what wonderful freedom expression it is to choose our own route through, our own best personal route through our well-being and spirituality. So of all the areas that we're thinking about right now, it's not just are we clean and tidy at home and in our businesses. There's something deeply profound about each of us coming in tune with the meaning of the time, of really understanding what it is to be a person alive in 2021. It's a new idea about what our humanity means. I mean, Aquarius, very much the humanitarian sign, connected with revolution, freedom, equality, human rights. What have those meant to people through this period, and what are they going to mean into the future? These multiple generations that we're bringing in, now is the time when we start creating, we are seeding the thoughts of what's going to happen over the maybe 600 years yet to come. So not your everyday new moon in Aquarius, very exciting. So just diving into it. So as part, obviously we've got the sun and moon coming together on about 23 degrees. And then we had Venus and Jupiter coming together at 12 degrees. Very exciting as well. Those two, the benefics as they were called, the really lucky planets coming together. So we would normally expect to see with that, you know, really positive benefits. People feeling happy, people being able to be themselves. So very much this Aquarian energy of it's okay to be yourself, it's okay to be different, it's okay to be weird, it's okay to tune into what makes you you. I mean, I know we're used to the phrase now about, you know, you be you, but never has it been more conditioned in the stars that that is actually the way in which we're all going to be expected to be. It's not going to be an optional extra anymore that, well, in some circumstances, I feel comfortable to be myself. This is up to all of us to start to make that environment a reality for ourselves every day of the week. And I really shouldn't miss out. We've got our Mercury retrograde in there, a little bit more about that later, but certainly spicing things up. And also Saturn. Again, we'll talk a bit more about Saturn because the Saturn-Uranus squares that are coming up this year are really quite profound. But Saturn being in the mix, co-ruler of Aquarius, there's something here about making our visions real, about the checks and balances that we have to have when we're trying to make things better. To make sure that we don't throw everything out, so that we cherish what we've inherited, we look after it, we evolve it. You know, this isn't a hard break. I mean, I think it's really worth saying that although we're all terribly excited about Age of Aquarius and about this new moon, there's still this sense of balancing. There's a gentleness that needs to be going on underneath as we really hold the energy of ourselves, all the things that we've experienced. You know, I think it's very telling that this great conjunction was there at 0 degrees. It's like we're bringing everything together that's of the old and the new to make sure that we build that bridge into the future, and that as many people as possible are able to take part in that in a meaningful way. So although there is a revolution, it's probably a fairly gentle one, it's a personal one, but it's one that's going to stick.
Oh, I love that, Vicky. When you were talking, I was thinking about you inheriting that business with £6 million worth of debt. And it's sort of like how we inherit the planet right now, right? Our children, and we come onto this Earth ship, and there's a lot of difficulties, there's challenges, but you can look at it as like, I've inherited a business at £6 million of debt, or I've inherited this business that has all this potential and could have this direction that could be really amazing. And you end up selling it on Wall Street to a Fortune 500 company. And it's like, that's the vision. Because I know that with the new moon in Aquarius, it's not just it's a personal revolution, but sometimes it's that collective vision, right? So it's like, yeah, what if the Earth's timeline, like what if we all intend to get on a timeline where the Earth has the equivalent of selling to a Fortune 500 company? Not that we want to sell the Earth, but the fact that it seems bad right now. There's this shadow, and we talked a little bit about the shadow of Aquarius, which I think is super interesting for people to understand, right? The technological, the kind of slightly dystopian shadow of Aquarius, but having the intention to get on the light side of this moon, the light side of this planet, the light side of Aquarius, and express the very, as you say, humanitarian global values of Aquarius, rather than the sort of more slightly shady ones. But I think it's better the devil you know. So could you share a little bit more about that and how to flip it? Because you obviously did a great job with your own inherited company that you got from your mother, and you saw the positive and you ran with it and you made it something beautiful.
So I think it all comes back to the same kind of principles underneath, and these Saturn and Uranus elements are very important. So the Aquarian side. So actually, probably my first approach with the business was to talk to people, and it's that collaborative sense. So there's something very humbling about inheriting a business, because suddenly you realize, I mean, just as you're saying, that you don't start with a blank sheet, right? I mean, we all arrive with whatever we're given. I know there's sayings in life about, you know, you play with the deck of cards you've been given. I mean, this was a deck of cards and then some. And in retrospect, there were so many things I wish I'd known. I hadn't expected to inherit. I was really expecting that the business would be sold. Although I inherited a share, I wasn't a sole shareholder. So actually that having to work with other shareholders who'd got competing ideas about what should happen with that business. And also really sort of getting my head around a whole load of sort of technological aspects. So the absolute sort of need suddenly to understand transport and finance-backed leasing was extremely complicated, even for me with my accountancy background.
Wow.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, and there was
practice for the age of Aquarius.
It was very good practice. And I think also that Saturnine sense of being restricted. I mean, in my personal charts, obviously I used to work both with my personal and with the business chart. My personal chart had some perhaps unsurprisingly really difficult aspects to my moon, representing my mother, really by Saturn. And in retrospect, I can really see how it was a doubling down of responsibility. It was like, you know, you think you've progressed to a certain point where you understand a certain amount about the way the world works. I mean, I had been through my first Saturn return at 29, so I knew a bit about myself, but actually we always say, don't we, that being an entrepreneur is one of the fastest ways to go through personal development journey. And lo and behold, there I was sort of thinking, oh my God, I've got to do this. I'm on my own. It's lots and lots of things I don't understand. It's like landing on a foreign planet almost. It was like, you know, I'd actually left my job at the Royal Opera House to go and work there. So I went from a world of sparkle, of operas and ballets and galas, and literally 1 month later turned up in a small town, you know, in the Midlands, looking up, you know, suddenly responsible for about 80 employees. At that point, a good few hundred trucks. I mean, in the end, when we sold, we've got over 2,000 trucks. Wow. We used to run all of McDonald's transport in the UK. We used to run all of Domino's pizzas. I mean, it really, it was a good business. It was a good blue chip business, but the amount of work that it took to really absorb that I was up to that responsibility and that I could get I was going to say, sort of get in touch with that technological element as well, and the engineering just took, I think it's a depth. Yeah, it's a depth that comes through when you start working with the planets that actually means that you realize that the archetypes are always there to support us, that the wheels keep turning, and eventually we get to the point where actually we can see the wood for the trees, we can see the route through, and we can work with other people to, again, make that vision a reality.
Yeah, and maybe the thing with the technological side, it's the, you know, there's a light and a shadow side with everything. including technology, and it's when we lose our humanness to it. You know, it sounds like obviously the technology is useful, but it's if we completely disassociate from our bodies. It's if we stop feeling, it's if we stop touching, it's if we stop hugging, and there is a lot of that going on, and we stop connecting. But what I'm hearing you say is actually, with this collective, the Age of Aquarius being so much about collaboration, and having, the first thing you did was have conversations, communicate, and get into that vulnerable place where it's like, I need help.
Do you know, I really think it was. And it was interesting that although it was a family business, it was the choice to actually extend that concept of family to the whole organization. So we went through a process whereby we would hire in people who then would get comfortable, they would be happy, they would then bring colleagues that they'd worked with before, sometimes they would bring other family members. And there was this feeling that absolutely we wanted people inside the tent and to feel part of it. I mean, I realise now that in some ways, perhaps it's not surprising that it was successful, because it was ahead of its time, in the sense that this, I do strongly believe, will be the way of doing business going forward, that we will have to treat each other with respect as though we were related. It's that transparency, you know, it's the collaborative approach that I think is going to be the only way. Unless something's a win-win-win, I just don't think it's going to be sustainable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And how do we hold it? Because I don't know how much, I don't want to get too political. I don't know how much you're looking into it, right? But how do you see it astrologically as well? So this year is this year with a lot of new seeds. We're here today to sow new seeds, right? We're here today to think differently, to expand what's possible, to have these sorts of discourses about what can we see going forward and how can we be wise. And, you know, one of the things that is not a conspiracy theory, there's like this 2030, you will be happy and you will own nothing, right? This great reset. So the idea that, you know, people won't have their own homes, they will be on a more sort of universal credit system, and it'll look very different with the smart cities and stuff. Is that something where you see the Aquarian age sort of disrupting that, or that there's going to be almost like a split where there's this very tribal kind of, almost people going back to their roots and living with, they've got their own doctor and their own teacher and their own school, which is within their community of like-minded souls or similarly minded souls, each in their own weird and wonderful individual ways, but having a similar set of values, which says, actually, no, I really don't want to be in a smart city and being told how much, you know, what I should do and where I should go. And what do you see happening with that? Because that is a big shift that is coming, right? Like it's on the World Economic Forum. They're not hiding that agenda.
So I hope I'm not going to fudge the question, but actually, I think it's all back to values. I think that the Age of Aquarius requires us all to get crystal clear about what our own values are and how we want to feel. So I think for those people for whom living in a smart city is absolutely their dream come true, they will be filling their boots. And I think for everybody who for whom that is not true, but something else is, that's what they'll be doing. And I think that's the fascinating piece of it. It's actually accepting that the individual has to, it's like, we're going to have to talk about manifestation at some point, and when we come on to the intention setting, you know, manifestations only really work when we've put our heart and soul into them, when they are our truth. So I think that whatever we're manifesting, you know, the key, whether or not that is sort of super technological or quite the opposite, it's going to really depend on groups of like-minded, like-valued people coming together and making things happen and work, and people being able to step in and shining. I mean, it's very interesting, this sort of Aquarius Leo, you know, the natural opposition that we have. Well, there's actually also a polarity that comes together here and synthesizes, you know, so in that Aquarian moment, we're also all able to shine. That Leo energy of being center stage, of ruling, that is something that I think people bring into their own lives. So we'll start seeing new types of leadership pulling these communities together. And I think that communities then will manifest the technologies that are most relevant to them. So that might be sort of hyper tech, or it might be, you know, really low tech but nurtured. I don't see that we're going to in some ways have the I don't think we're going to have the dichotomy that perhaps it feels like at the moment, but I'm
Right.
very interested to see how, as we go through these sort of Saturn-Uranus squares through this year, I think we are going to see, it's almost going to be like waves of turbulence as that conversation keeps going. We've obviously seen the huge sort of discussions around science on the back of COVID. I mean, that sort of unlocking of the international conversations about science, I expect are going to be setting so many sort of conversations and hairs running into the future that no one will be able to escape at least thinking about these things.
Emma's saying, I love inclusive values-based leadership. Yeah, and it sounds like when I'm listening to you, it's like there's like this multiverse going on. Like we're quite black and white right now, and we're talking about the manifesting and the kind of, I think in this Piscean age, it was like this drama triangle, right? So people were trying to rescue each other and change each other and problem solve, and there were victims and heroes and perpetrators. And I feel like that is all being like popped out of into this circular time where we're whole cells and everybody's doing their own thing. And if you're an I cell, you're connecting and attracting the other like-minded parts of the puzzle, right? And if you want to fly to Mars, you're meeting with all the people that are going to go and populate Mars, right? Like, and then everything in between those extremes sounds like there's going to be more of a shades of gray. It's not black or white. It's that mysticism manifesting on the planet where, you know, the 4 stages of spirituality. It's like the first stage is like antisocial behavior, like you're drug addict. And then it's like you're fundamentalist, you're a born again Christian, or you're like rigid yogi, or like the fundamentalist. The 3rd stage is like the shades of gray, and then the 4th stage is like the mystic, right, where that God is everything, it's everywhere, it's you know, a direct relationship. And so it feels like almost humanity is just coming into that shades of gray stage where maybe there's going to be more allowance. So because like some of my fears, like I want to live in a smart city, like what am I going to do? But then I start to hear friends low by me like, oh, we're starting this community, do you want to come and check out this? Or there's this school popping up, there's this tiny home thing on this estate near here, and there's this opportunity, that opportunity. And I'm like, oh right, there's all these other ways that are also springing up at the same time as the stuff that I consider to be scary popping up. So it's like fascinating to me, this kind of emerging at the birth of this time. And so this year, what should we be kind of like aware of as we move through the year, and the seeds that we sow today, any kind of words of wisdom as to how to hold it at the moment?
Sure. So I think the first thing to do with this Aquarius new moon is really to be kind to ourselves. I think if there is a shadow side that we internalize to do with Aquarius, is this sense that maybe things have to be a bit perfect. You know, this real sort of, well, I've got a vision and therefore anything less than that vision isn't going to be worth having. And actually, there's a whole new, it's almost, if we can consider this way as a new way of thinking about our visioning, that actually is probably the key to unlocking its manifestation in truth.
Oh, say
Rather
that
than,
again. Hold on, say that again. That's so good. The key to our visioning.
yeah, I've, to be honest, Kat, I just can't, it
Yeah,
just
no,
came
is
through, but
unlocking the manifestation.
yeah,
So it's kind of like how you vision it is how it's going to
exactly,
manifest. It's
exactly,
not about what you should vision or doing good, doing right. It's very
exactly.
kind, direct.
It's tuning in and being kind to ourselves so that we're changing the way that we envision things. So that into my mind is what the new moon in Aquarius really means. So it's not just the, oh my god, I've got to do my super new to-do list and everything on there is going to lead up to being perfect, which would be actually quite a sort of self-sabotaging way of going about that in the current energy. It's much more about, so how am I learning about how intention setting is working for me? What is my individual truth about how I best manifest? And how do I really get to know who I am through this process? Because ultimately everything that we intend really reflects our own values. And we've got to hope that one of those values will be about being kind to ourselves. Don't get me wrong, we also do want to make things happen. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of how it goes through the year. But I would say that absolutely the place to start right now is with sort of gentleness, kindness, tuning into that Mercury retrograde. I know we've all heard about how, you know, messes up communications, causes in the old days, posts to go missing, that sort of stuff. actually the positive side of it is really having that opportunity to go within. So it's asking us to sort of really think about, what are the thoughts that we tell ourselves? You know, what words do we use? How are we thinking? How are we framing our thoughts? So this little moment, and it's going to happen this weekend. So it's not just that we had this new moon one-off last night. We're still in the energy. Mercury retrograde is going to come across Venus tomorrow. It's going to be with Jupiter on Sunday. And so we're really at this point whereby not only how do we think and feel about our new beginnings and the seeds we're setting, but then how do we feel about love with Venus? How do we feel about our growth plans for the year, Jupiter? So really we have an opportunity over this next week pretty much to be actually tuning in to think, what is the most important thing that I want to be happening this month, this year? I mean, in terms of setting our intentions, I would say there's a huge opportunity to make our vision real.
Okay, hold on, I've got to stop you one sec.
Right.
What is the most important thing for this month and this year? Everyone might want to just write that down, right? What is the most important thing for this month?
Yeah.
What is the most important thing for you this year? And then having written when this Jupiter Venus tomorrow, how do I feel about love? And how do I feel about my growth? And I just want to quickly chime in before you move on. I was really thinking when you were talking about how they always used to use the example of like a car, right? I think like the movie The Secret got everyone thinking about manifesting it, like you want that new car and you're driving in your new car. And I think most people are like, who even cares about a car right now? Like there is nowhere even to drive. And so in a way we've been forced into having intention setting and manifesting. It's like, what energies, what qualities, what experiences and relationships and deepenings in our own learning do we want to delve into? You know, that's one of the things I'm loving about the Eden Room, is we can bring together things that have been bubbling under the surface for so long, and there's a smorgasbord of like, actually I'm really interested in tantra, actually I'd love to learn more about astrology and how it relates to me, or crystals, or this thing and that thing. And I think this new moon in Aquarius and the age of Aquarius is allowing us permission, almost with the lockdowns and everything, to be like, yes, that's the clear way through, that we've had all these distractions, but now it's kind of pulling us home, very much like pulling us inward.
I think that's perfect. I mean, I really do think that it's how we want to feel as the manifestation. We actually manifest a feeling. So I agree with you. Actually, it probably never should have been about the car, the house, the whatever else, because those are just external representations of how we're trying to feel. And I think that this new moon in Aquarius, more than ever, I mean, it's a little bit like paint stripper. It's going to be saying you didn't really want that. And I think it's hard for us sometimes to accept that actually the going within and the getting the feelings right means that we're going to naturally attract the things that we need in our life, rather than just those things that were more status driven. There's nothing quite like a good dose of Aquarian imagery, really to sort of flag up that so much of the status symbols that we've got used to actually probably never made us happy. So many of the things that we've been trying to achieve, probably conditioning that we've picked up from earlier years, and that we really have got to the point whereby, as we know ourselves better, very much this new moon in Aquarius energy, we will naturally know much more so what we want to manifest. So this really, for me, and I appreciate it sounds a bit circular, but this new moon is about getting to know ourselves. It's about getting to know what lights us up. It's getting to know what makes us individuals, and then starting to think about how those could actually start coming into our life. But if we don't do that piece of introspective work first, we might find ourselves chasing our tails. And in terms of the theme of the year, when we get into these Saturn-Uranus squares that are going to be coming up repeatedly through this year, we will be challenged. Now, what we really want to make sure is we're going to be challenged. So Saturn, planet of restriction, responsibility, authority, of making things happen, of the real world, of commitment and tradition. You know, coming to right angles with Uranus, ruler of Aquarius. I mean, arguably they're both co-owners, but Uranus really embodies that Aquarian principle that little bit more. It's a planet of revolution, of individuality, of really sort of eccentricity, perhaps on some of the shadow side. but absolutely that break for freedom sort of changes every aspect, often the planet of the unexpected. So we know that we're going to be buffering between those two. Now, when those challenges come up, we want to make sure that, oh, okay, we're feeling like we really know what we want, we know who we are, and this is the opportunity that we needed to prove to ourselves that we can make our vision real. That's where we want to be. Where we don't want to be is actually by not doing that inner work first, of finding that we're getting sort of assailed by unexpected forces that are actually making us make the changes that perhaps we've been putting off. So more than anything, this next sort of the 2-week period that we've got until we have this full moon in Pisces, which will have a building energy to it. But now is the time to really sort of go in and make sure that, I know we always say be careful what you wish for, but now's the time to work out what we really, really wish for before we go any further into this year.
Making those wishes. Is it full moon in Virgo, sun in Pisces? Because
yes,
we're going to do a planning session on that next full moon, aren't we? And that's going to be brilliant. Like the full moon in Virgo is always, I've got a Virgo rising, so I love that full moon in Virgo. But this one, I don't have anything in my chart in Aquarius, nothing.
No, but it's very interesting because I did have a quick look at your chart and it's falling in the 6th house. So I was just wondering if you're spending a lot of time at work at the moment, Kat.
Yeah, just a little bit. For me, but at work at home.
Wow, this is the new way of being. Actually, I must admit, I did have a little look around sort of this weekend with Valentine's Day, and it's so funny, this sort of new moon together with sort of Jupiter and Venus. It's like, so lots of pleasant things potentially, but with Mercury retrograde, everybody having to do it at home, so not much movement. It's like this is a continuing theme.
That was so lovely this morning. If anyone didn't catch the Tantra session, we'll get it up in the Eden room, because it had like this amazing at-home ritual, whether or not you're partnered, to do for Valentine's Day. Even just having Hilly and Becky, the founder and teacher of Shakti Tantra, talking about it, we all got into this beautiful space. So we'll definitely get that up for anyone who just wants to slow down this weekend, luxuriate, get into that sensual space, because it really ties in with this new moon work as well. It's like what I'm hearing is it's like kindness. The ritual was so kind, it was super gentle with the body and with the self, and meeting the self and actually experiencing the tenderness and the intimacy of that inward connection. You know, there's been a lot of up and out, up and out, up and out, and all of personal development, up and out, like high fives, hands in the air, shoot the sky. And I've always been sort of feeling this, but now we're just like, it's in and down and in and down, and like sow those seeds and plant your roots and settle in, and like all is good, like all is well, but we've got to connect to remember to come home. You know, it's not all out there in the illusion. It's like we're being led, aren't we, in this very, I think the universe is benevolent, so it's all happening for us, not to us. It's just that it's challenging because we haven't been taught, we've forgotten these ways of working with it, which is what we're attempting to remember and recuperate and bring back with these sorts of ancient practices like following the stars. This is my journal. It says written in the stars. So I'm going to write these things down now. I'm going to listen to you, Vicky. So we're doing so well for time. We've got a good 20 minutes. So we've got this full moon coming up for Virgo. How much, like I sometimes wonder about this, so how much on these new moons should we just be focusing on the short period of time ahead, like this next month, and how much should we be going, okay, this is everything for, you know, for the rest of my life, amen, or for the next year, or with this one in particular, what period of time are we looking forward to?
So I personally think that each new moon talks to the 12-month period ahead. So there's between this new moon in Aquarius and then there will be another one the next year. So although we have our lunar cycle that's working on the 28 days, really each one is bizarrely on this sort of annual cycle. So very much thinking over a 12-month period makes sense to me. That said, I do believe that the times that we're living in now, things move so quickly. I mean, I think it's really difficult to tell where we're going to be. I mean, if we think back to this time last year, who would have imagined everything that would have happened?
Yeah.
You know, so increasingly when I'm working with people, we're really focusing probably on about up to 1 month at a time. So we're looking sort of new moon to new moon, full moon to full moon, and in that rhythm. And then also as the sun is moving through. In terms of how people are developing through this period, I think that does depend a little bit on personal charts. Some people who've got planets in fixed signs will find that some of these sort of the Uranus-Saturn elements will be really kicking things off for them. Whereas it could be that if these don't particularly kick off on your chart, then maybe you're having a slightly quieter period. So having said definitely 12 months, definitely 1 month, it can well be sometimes that people can feel crescendos in their lives. And that's really sort of where we get into some of the depth work of, well, if you've got, for example, you know, Pluto or Saturn coming up to conjunct your sun, you're going to be feeling that. So actually working through those periods with people perhaps more personally can be quite meaningful.
I have to say as well, I'd love to see the Elon Musk chart, like him putting all that money into Bitcoin this week made Bitcoin go crazy. And Uranus, what you're talking about, moving through these fixed signs, because it's in Taurus right now, which is my sign, obviously it's creating a lot of change and transformation. But I notice how it's in, like, the planet of eccentricity and change and energy is in the house, the zodiac sign of value and money and stability. So the disruption financially for business owners and in investments, you know, and how it's how the cryptos are taking off right now is no surprise, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's financial astrologers who really track these things in the markets who are a little bit more expert than I am, and they've been going crazy about the potential of Bitcoin.
They're saying a single Bitcoin could get to 500,000 per coin.
It's amazing,
But it
isn't
will
it?
be like gold. So whether or not it would be, you know, people won't want to sell them, will they? I know somebody who sold like loads to pay his mortgage, and he's just got his head in his hands at the moment.
Oh, oh. It's a really good point actually about the Taurus energy, because I mean equally having Saturn in Aquarius, you know, Saturn again associated with things being stable, being reliable, you know, very sort of visible, you know, status driven, but the status quo sort of transitioning through Aquarius at the same point. I mean, definitely we are in for interesting times, as if we didn't already know.
And what happens if we resist that? If we are like Taurian and we don't particularly enjoy change, and it is trying to mess up our status quo, but we're used to our normal life, like what happens? Is it, can you resist it, or is it just something that's gonna, you know, the wave's coming and you either ride the wave or get knocked down by it?
So I think that's a personal philosophy question to a certain extent. I think that if we're experiencing something, then it's coming with its challenge for a reason. And I think this is where we have to trust that the universe will only give us the things that actually are going to unlock more of our potential. So I think it's a question almost of sort of thinking, well, what does it mean for me? How is it that my life has got stuck in some areas that maybe do need to shift? But that doesn't necessarily mean throwing everything out. I mean, I think the advantage of being a Taurus is that you're more likely to have thought through your life about what you value. So yes, it might be challenging to think about, well, how come other people value things differently, and how come this doesn't feel certain to me, and there's other things coming up that don't feel right, but you know who you are. So it really sort of leads to a revisiting and a refresh, not necessarily a complete revolution. So I think that always the first approach with something like Uranus is to think through, okay, it's actually only going to take out the dead wood. It's not going to take down the whole tree.
I love that. Okay, so I'm looking at my values. I'm being kind to myself.
Yeah.
I'm setting intentions that feel like a soft intentions, things for me, things that nourish me, things I want to learn, things for the world.
That's right. I mean, I'm definitely getting this feeling, maybe we're picking up on the tantra vibe again, but it's almost like the cherry blossom moment. It's almost, okay, so we're just seeing those new buds, you know? So it's kind of like, actually, what's our hope? You're very much the time of the year for hope. You know, what do we hope is going to be coming for us and for the communities that we live and work with?
That's lovely. I love that cherry blossom moment. Gorgeous.
That's
All
where we
right.
are.
So we're having that time and space over this weekend, you say, where
Very much so.
lovely lucky aspects are here as well to kind of sprinkle
Yeah,
a bit of dust, fairy dust on the dreams. Yeah,
completely. And what I
yeah,
would
that's what there's a lot.
say is this is a time for sort of vision. So it's very much a time for the thinking, the reflection, the what are our desires. What I would say is it's not the right time to do the deep dive into the planning. That probably happens once we get Mercury going direct on the 20th of February. So I would say over this little period, so over this sort of next week or so, this is the point almost for a bit of dreaming. I mean, we'll pick up more so on that when we're looking sort of next month at looking at the full moon in Virgo. But this sort of, it's almost preemptive. The sun's getting really quite close, goes into Pisces actually on the 19th of February. So kind of early in the month. So this feeling of what would we like to happen?
Yeah.
What would we like to dream into being? That's the period now. And then once we get, so it's all gonna kind of happen at once. We're going to get the sun moves into Pisces, Mercury is going to go direct, Venus is going to go into Pisces, and then suddenly these things will actually start, that creativity that's being seeded now will start to blossom. And then we'll really start, I think, being able to make some detailed plans. But I wouldn't rush to, horrible term, solutionize what it is that we want. Now is definitely the time for sort of that blue sky thinking that we associate with Aquarius.
Oh, I love that, Vicky. Thanks so much for saying that. Let me know in the chat if that was helpful for you, because that was definitely helpful for me. Obviously, with a startup right now, even though it's in soft launch, you know, there's that feeling of like the horse is at the start line kind of thing. There's, you know, there's lots of energy that wants to move forward, and having this Mercury retrograde, it's been interesting to be like, okay, hold the line, like what keep dreaming this, keep feeling this, keep like get ready to move forward, but it's not that quite like go forward, you know.
It's exactly like that. And I mean, and I think we need to be super kind to ourselves that this new moon in Aquarius, it feels like we've moved house, but we still have to unpack. It's like that moment where you hope that you pack the kettle somewhere near the top of the box, right? So we are in a new era. We are very much in this sort of beginning of the new epoch, the age of Aquarius type vibe, but it's not like we arrive fully baked.
Oh, I love that.
You
You've
know,
arrived, but you have to unpack. That's
you
exactly
do.
what it feels like.
You do.
But you're knackered already because you
It's
just moved house, but it's like, and now we have to unload the boxes and set
it,
everything up.
yeah, it's really like that. This isn't like going on holiday. This isn't like we're going to visit somewhere, then we're going to go back to where it was before. It's like, no, this is a whole scale, you know, really big ticket. We're all moving, you know, but and it is like we've crossed the threshold, but it's we're not ready to go and do all the things, you know, but having the ideas, having that intention and holding the intention that actually this is going to be beautiful, but still allowing that, yeah, we're tired, you know, last year's been tiring. And there is a sense with the new of like, oh my gosh, have I got the energy inside? I mean, you know, this Saturn in the mix, the Mercury retrograde, it's like, oh my God, you're talking to me about new things already, and I haven't even processed the old. And it's like, well, we all need to take a bit of a breather. You know, we've got a lot going on in air signs this year. The lunar and solar eclipses will be Gemini and Sagittarius. So it's still all about, you know, space to think, space to breathe. You know, so we need to take that time for ourselves in order for these great ideas and new beliefs and everything else to actually come to fruition.
Yeah, we're moving into a big like 200-year period of air, aren't we now?
Yeah.
And actually somebody was saying to me that the air is sometimes the most challenging. You know, there was the flood, the great flood that sort of cleansed humanity, and there was fires and there was the ice age, but this time the air, it's the kind of battle of ideas and beliefs, and how humanity is having this kind of belief and thought quantum makeover
Yeah.
of our understanding of our own beings and how we work and how reality is constructed, and how, you know, that our beliefs about ourselves and about other people are what comes true, are what we experience. And
Yeah.
you're constantly selecting the thoughts that, you know, some of them consciously and some of them unconsciously, but whatever the what and that in your mind is what you're going to perceive.
I think that's spot on. I think that manifestations have never been faster. you know, and I think our understanding of the technology of manifestation is going to improve significantly. But there will be no escape, as you say, from actually having to realize that the inner creates the outer. And I think this is where we're back to, you know, what might happen in the future. Actually, that's very much going to depend on the inner landscapes that we paint. So now is the time for really getting to grips, coming to terms with what our inner landscape currently looks like. And if there's anything that we're manifesting currently that we don't like, it's time to do a bit of weeding.
And that's where the meditation can come in, right? Meditation, the things like on the Eden room, the sound bowls, the binaural beats, taking the time and space, because meditation is not something that comes naturally to everyone. And for some people, it's better to go and have a run or whatever, but some focus needs to be placed on our inner, because it's all a printout.
Absolutely. I mean, through this period, I mean, I know we've had this chat. I mean, I've been meditating at least 2 hours a day because I've just felt that that's what the energy is being calling for. This internal work, actually, absolutely, it comes to meet us sooner or later, sooner rather than later in the current energies.
And so that's the other thing about this age of Aquarius that we keep picking up on. And I love listening to you talk about manifestation, because when you realize you're manifesting that version of your child, right? Like I put my daughter to bed the other night. So we had this sort of difficult weekend. My daughter was 4.5. And I wrote all the things that were annoying me about her down on a piece of paper. Like, she's this way and she's this way and she's this way. And I flipped every single sentence and I wrote a new script. So I re-scripted my daughter. Like, my daughter is loving, she is kind, she's so talented, she's so self-responsible, blah, 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 blah. And I just didn't change my daughter. I didn't tell her anything. I just did my own scripting around who she was. And that night, I honestly, nothing else changed. She was like, she got herself into bed, tucked herself in and was like, good night, mummy. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff so powerful, because I've used it for big things in my business. I've used it for da-da-da. But right now it's about where we live in our homes at this moment. Changing those realities in the small ways can make the biggest difference to our hearts and our quality of life.
It's that, absolutely. I'm reminded, I know we were talking about 962, but I'm reminded all the thing about, you know, Ringo saying about you travel the world from inside your room. That's what we're doing now. We are creating the reality that we're coming into by being forced to be restricted. We are equally creating something of huge freedom. I'm totally inspired about your story with your kid as well. That's wonderful.
Is this, you know, the pen and the paper, right? That thought, the thing we're talking about, the air, the environment is allowing us to have these new thoughts, to have these enlightening thoughts, right? For everybody to receive enlightenment, like what we said at the beginning. It's not soloists anymore. It's not John Lennon out there on his own. It's the choir. Like, it's all of humanity waking up in these ways. And then, but the pen and the paper brings those thoughts, or even the spoken word, into this vibration, into this now reality. And then you start to see the results in the physical world. And children, they just get it. They're picking up on our thought forms all the time, right? So anything we're projecting on them, they're like, okay. Like a dog, Caesar Milan would never work with the dog. He'd always work with the owner. But it's hard for our egos to deal with that, right? Which is the other Aquarian thing that we were saying. It's not comfortable. This is not necessarily a comfortable process, but it can be a beautiful process if we kind of surrender to it.
I think it's fair to say that surrendering is going to be the route forward. I did want to just drop in one little piece to look forward to.
100%, yes.
We do have coming up, so Venus and Mars are going to come together in Leo later this year. And so I just would like to remind everybody that although we might be about to have a Valentine's Day, which has got Venus and Jupiter together, but it's got Mercury retrograde in the middle. But as we build up through the energies this year, that's very beautiful. They only come together about every other year. So there will be light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I know we hear this from time to time. We're doing the work now to actually have the summer of love that we would like to experience.
And when is that? When is Venus and Mars in Leo?
They're definitely through Leo. It's really, and actually the sun will be coming through as well. So we're looking at about, let me get precisely. We're looking at, they come together 13th of July at 20 degrees Leo.
So
but they will be in
your
Leo.
holidays with your lover.
Yeah. So it's, but from sort of middle of June until pretty much the beginning of August.
Lovely. Okay, so final thoughts then. So we've set our intentions, we're being kind to ourselves, we're thinking about this next 12 months, but also very much the short term, the month ahead. We're going to be back here in a couple of weeks for the full moon event with the planning. Don't try and plan too much right now. It's more about being in the having it, well, it's half term next week and Mercury retrograde still, so allowing ourselves off the hook a bit and having a rest.
Completely.
Yeah.
I think the rest piece is very important, because I think we're all absorbing and up leveling in terms of the energies. I mean, obviously the planets work on their cycles, but the elements that have been coming together over these last few weeks are genuinely unusual. You know, we were talking about patterns that haven't happened for 600 years. You know, we're talking about the age of Aquarius as being a 2,000 year section of the precession of the equinoxes, which is a 26,000 year cycle. All of that means I think we deserve a little bit of a break in order just to absorb it all.
Wow, what a beautiful note to end it on. You all have permission from Vicky Green, chartered accountant, business astrologer. So now you know that if she says it, it's definitely not bad for business to take some time and have a rest this week. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you come back and be with us on the full moon. And do let us know in the chat any final thoughts or shares or feedback. Rachel says, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm floored at what I'm hearing and how it aligns to what I've been thinking, feeling and doing, because I don't know about astrology. There you go, Rachel. You're just a natural. You're just a natural. And Vicky, thank you so much. I'm so loving being able to dive deep on these pieces with you and bring it to our members at the Eden Room. So thank you. You're with us all year. So like, this is a journey for us all to be going on this year. You're in very good, safe, capable hands. And feel free to we can start to get to know our members a bit more. So feel free to sort of ask us questions, have a little look at your chart. You can find more out about Vicky. Vicky, do you want to quickly give your URL where people can come and find more about you?
Yeah, quite straightforward. So I'm vickygreen.com. So you should be able to find me relatively easily. Lovely to hear from you. So just get in touch, whether that's questions or you'd like to chat through chart. Absolutely happy.
Yeah, if you want a more personalized reading, then Vicky does do bespoke readings at her website. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for being here. We will be sending the replays. Can't wait to see you on the full moon. Lots of love, everyone. Have a lovely Valentine's Day. I love your Valentine's shawl, by the way, that I noticed. Happy love weekend, and look forward to seeing you with Vicky again in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you on the Eden Room next week. Take care. Much love.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Bye.
Bye.